From the studios of KSFR, Public Radio in Santa Fe, this is Oil of Dog with Gary Storm.
Good evening. I'm Gary Storm, and this is Oil of Dog. And I'm here to bring you all kinds of music with nothing but love.
So sad, went away crying, so mad, really was trying to give you what you needed what you had, everything you gave me, baby, always something bad. Yes, I hate you. Thanks for letting me off your chain.
Good evening, gents and ladymen, and welcome to another Oil of Dog. And I am thrilled and enthralled to bring Kevin Walmot back onto Oil of Dog. And Kevin Walmot, as you may remember, is a master collector of independent music from around the USA. Welcome aboard, Kevin.
Thank you, Gary. I'm again pleased to be here. I'm glad that you 7 days a week, or 5 days a week anyway, you give a voice to unknown lesser musicians.
It's entirely my pleasure. It's something that I've been doing ever since I was first a disc jockey back in 1974, is playing independent music. And in fact, Kevin is unique because he has introduced a level of precision, exactitude, reticulation, and science into the collection of independent music. And I'm sure this is unique in the world, what you've accomplished. So I'm very thankful to have you here.
Thanks. Well, it's funny. Music is unique because nobody has been to all the same shows that I've been to, but I'm sure a lot of other people have stables of lesser known musicians. That's what I should have said, lesser known, that they're proud of just as much as me.
But few people go through the incredible effort you go through of collecting a massive amount of this music and then organizing it on spreadsheets of multicolored categorizations and different ways of analyzing the music. So once again, I insist that you are unique in this regard. So,
well, I got a boatload of music for you today, that's for sure.
I should point out that Kevin is joining me remotely tonight on Oil of Dog because of the catastrophic mismanagement by the federal government of the COVID-19 pandemic. And so we're self-isolating, and Kevin is in his home studio, and I am here in the Oil of Dog studios.
That's right. We're a social distancing podcast right now, or a radio show anyway.
That's right. And so, Kevin, you did mention you have a boatload of music. And in fact, I've found that when I checked all the music you want to play, it's almost an hour worth of just music by itself, not to mention all the explanations and descriptions that we have to do. So I'm going to propose that we divide this show into two different shows. We'll broadcast half of it tonight, and we'll broadcast half of it a week hence, 7 days.
All right, that's fine. Whatever makes sense with your schedule.
Let's do it then. Okay, so, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you go about collecting music?
Sure. So, longtime listeners may remember I've discussed this in some other interviews, but it's pretty simple. When I move to a place, I start hanging out in the dive bars and the punk DIY bars. And oftentimes I'll have a lead of a music group or somebody that I already like that I know from the area, go see one of their shows, and then after I see a few of their shows, some other band might open for them that I also happen to like, so I'll start following them. And basically, I follow them on Facebook or their webpage or something, so I start keeping track of who's playing which gigs, which bands that I like, And then it sort of blossoms from there, like the old exponential, the hair commercial about they told two friends and they told two friends. And then suddenly I'm following, 100 different bands in various cities because I tend to move around a lot. So I have experience from a lot of different cities, at least 8 or 9 cities off the top of my head.
And you have a massive collection from each city. That's exciting. Let me ask you one thing. Does the stinkiness of the bathroom in any way correlate to the greatness of the music?
Absolutely, absolutely. You definitely find the best music in places with the most repulsive bathrooms.
I know that. Everybody who's a real rocker knows that. So cool. So what planet, what segment of the planet, what segment of the universe are you going to isolate for us tonight when you offer us some independent music?
All right. Well, I have a show that's really packed with music tonight. I've been sort of putting this off because it's so complicated, but I think now is the time to get to it. Mainly, I want to talk about Los Angeles tonight. And, I lived in the Los Angeles general area, if you count all the way between Santa Barbara to San Diego. I've off and on, I've moved in there, I've moved out of there several times. And there's something like 18 million people who live in the greater Los Angeles region, so there's bound to be a few good musicians in there somewhere.
Yeah, I happen to know that there have been a few good musicians from the Los Angeles area, so yes.
So I have kind of a handful. I have 10 songs from Los Angeles I want to play tonight, which is more music than I've played in some other interviews. I'm going to try and keep my comments a little bit terse, hoping that we don't end up getting split into 2 episodes. But of course, I'm going to have to introduce each artist and tell a little about how I met them and first heard them.
Very cool. Okay, so we're going to be exploring the independent music of Los Angeles.
That's true, but if I may interrupt, if you don't mind indulging me, I want to actually revisit an old town as well. Our first interview that we had, I talked about Evansville, Indiana, where I used to live. So I have a couple of pickups from there. There's 2 artists that I really wanted to play, but they did not have recordings at the time that we had my first interview. So I'm going to squeeze 2 more in there if you don't mind indulging me.
Oh, it's no indulgence. The show is yours. And so what we have here now, are we going to start out in Evanston, Indiana?
That's right. Let's start out with 2 from Evansville.
Oh, I'm sorry, Evansville. I'll never get that right. I'm sorry.
Easy mistake to make unless you've lived there.
Okay, Evansville, Indiana, and then we're going to zoom across the country to Los Angeles. Okay, so this will be a globe-trotting expedition.
That's right. That's my plan.
All right, well, tell us what you've discovered then.
Okay, in my first interview talking about Evansville, I mentioned a guy named Rob Zaricki is his full name. And I said that he was plugged into the music scene. He knows all these bands there. But he didn't have any recordings that he was proud of himself. He had a few solo recordings on YouTube, but they're kind of low quality. I know he didn't want me to play his old stuff from YouTube, but he has a much more recent recording. He's joined a band that's called Drivin South Blues Band, and he plays bass for that band. And they've put out 4 recordings, and I picked out one of them. I would like to play you the Drivin South Blues Band cover of the classic old Muddy Waters song, Standin' Round Cryin'.
Okay, and the name of the group again?
Drivin South Blues Band.
Cool.
Got me standing around crying. Oh, baby, look how you got me standing around crying. No, you don't love me, little girl. Evansville. Oh, baby, I ain't gonna be riding around your automobile. 'Cause you got so many men, I'm afraid you might get me killed. Nothing like you used to be. Oh, baby, you ain't nothing like you used to be. When I was deep in love with you, girl, you was just sweet as an apple on a tree.
So that was wonderful musicianship and pretty straight ahead blues.
Yep, I think he would be complimented to hear that. He considers himself mainly a blues bassist. I actually took some bass lessons from him just a few weeks before moving out of Evansville, and he started me off learning blues, basically. And I can't say that I've kept up with it enough to actually do him justice, but yep, that's where he considers himself on the spectrum.
Wow. Okay. So, and his name is Rob Z, not to be confused with the Rob Zombie, who definitely is not a straight ahead blues musician.
Correct. There's no overlap in genre there.
Okay. Cool. Well, that was great. That's cool. And once again, from Evansville, Indiana.
That's right.
And he's still playing out of there. Is that correct?
That's right. So Drivin South Blues Band, you can look him up on Facebook if you happen to be in the Evansville area. He has occasionally performed gigs in the past. He plays guitar and a bunch of other instruments. But basically, he's only playing in public right now with Drivin South Blues Band.
Very cool. All right, and you say you have yet another one from Evansville to share with us.
That's right. I was really hoping to play this guy for you, but he had no recordings at the time that I was interviewing with you first. He had YouTube stuff, like I said, that he really didn't want released in public. So he's got a studio track now. And so this is a guy, his first name is Caleb. He performs solo and he goes by the moniker Homegrown Lemon Trees. And interestingly enough,
so that's the name of his band, Homegrown Lemon Tree?
Yeah, so if you look up Homegrown Lemon Trees, plural, on Facebook, you can see some of the recordings he's done, in his house, so forth. Here's some other stuff. I believe he's also got a Bandcamp page that you might be able to find where he's got some recordings.
Cool. All right.
And this guy is very unusual music. I just love the way that he bends his guitar chords, and I just love the ethereal quality of his voice. I consider it absolutely not run-of-the-mill. This is a little bit weird. And the interesting thing is he's starting to work with Rob Z, who we just heard from on the bass, because Rob Z has an actual studio in his house. So they're doing more studio recordings, and this is his first studio track.
Cool. And what's the name of the tune?
So this one's called Somedaze, Somedaze.
And this is the Homegrown Lemon Tree.
That's right, out of Evansville, Indiana.
To really
Well, that was really cool. You know, if I were to play that music in a set, I'd play them with something like Bright Eyes or Bon Iver or Bon Iver, as they might be called. You know, groups like that, those spacey, wild, wonderful, poetic folk music. That was great.
Yeah, that's a great comparison. Definitely poetic and definitely spacey. So that's some of the stuff that I really love.
Cool. That was really great. Wow. So who would think that in I'll never get that straight. Okay, Evansville, Indiana, such magical music would persist. That's really wonderful.
And that was my point in the first interview. It's such a wide variety of music. It's not like everybody there listens to country or something. You get a very wide variety of very different music.
This is really fascinating. And so discuss for just a moment, if you can, a little bit about what actually we mean when we're talking about independent music. I mean, I know what my definition of it is. How do you define the genre or the area or the region or the planet known as independent music?
Well, it used to be easier, you know, even as late as maybe 10 or 15 years ago, you would just say that independent music is somebody who's not signed to a label. But that's become problematic because it's easy to start your label these days. You know, anybody can have their own label pretty much. So sort of what I define independent music as is basically DIY, in that members of the band or their wives and girlfriends have to do the promotion, have to help with the recording. You know, they don't have their own regular recording studio, you know, unless it's in their house or something. They have to rent one or something. So they're not set up and they're not supported by big money is basically my definition.
Cool. All right. Yes. No, that's great. And I should point out I'm talking to Kevin Walmut. And in case you haven't realized this, he is a scientific and methodical collector of independent music. Yeah. When, you know, I made a point. I've always, since I started being a disc jockey in 1974, I've made it a point to find and discover independent music, and I did find groups on small record labels, like there was a Boogie Boy record label or Bougie Boy record label that put out a group called Devo, who I played right out of the box, and there was Alternative Tentacles was a tiny label that put out a group called the Dead Kennedys that I played out of the box. And so independent music is incredibly important, and it's not because you're going to find somebody who may or may not be famous, but because great music is worth it no matter what. This is a wonderful thing and a virtuous thing you're doing, Kevin Walmut.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the compliment, and I totally agree with you. Yeah, it's always best to find a band at the beginning of their career when you can say, oh, I heard these guys when I was in some little dive bar with 20 other people, you know, and then later they go on to play an arena, or they don't. I tend to like the music that people produce in their early stages of their career better than later. So the music that I just enjoy listening to again and again is old demo tapes and stuff that was before bands really made it big. Yep.
There's something about that old vintage self-made music. So you said you were going to present a couple of people from Evansville,
yes,
Indiana. And so is it time for us to fly across the country to Los Angeles?
That is correct. I'm going to take you to Los Angeles. I'll just mention on the side that I'll have some more pickups from bands from Albuquerque. We did a 2-part episode about Albuquerque, and there were still 3 really good bands that did not have recordings at the time that I did the interview, and now they do, but I'll save those recordings for another episode.
Okay, so we're going to be picking up Albuquerque in another episode. So let's put on our, let's see, it's not the Wayback Machine. What machine do we...
How about our traveling shoes?
Traveling shoes, that's it. And I got my high-heeled sneakers on as well. So, all right, so let's land in Los Angeles. And what are we going to do there first?
All right, so if I'm not mistaken, Los Angeles is 1,600 miles away from Evansville, Indiana. So we've just made quite a journey. And like I was saying before, there's 18 million people in Los Angeles. So there's obviously guaranteed to be a wide variety of music and a lot of talented people in different genres.
And I'll bet you there are way fewer people in Evansville, Indiana.
Yes. I have to look up the population, but it's in the several 10,000s or something.
So, Kevin, it looks like we're nearing the half-hour point here on Oil of Dog. So, before we land in Los Angeles, why don't we take a short break to let the stations identify themselves?
Sounds good to me.
I'm Gary Storm with Kevin Walmot, and we'll be back.
Will you discover another song you never knew you loved? Find out in the next hour when Oil of Dog continues.
Through all the noise, this is the one and only
Oil of Dog.
Okay, we're back, and tonight on Oil of Dog, because of the catastrophic and criminal mismanagement of the pandemic crisis by the United States federal government, I am here in the Oil of Dog studios, and Kevin Walmot is at home in his own studio, and we are having a virtual long-distance meeting of the minds. I want to remind you that Kevin Walmot is the meticulous and sedulous collector of independent music who has appeared several times on Oil of Dog. Kevin not only collects recordings of independent musicians, but creates spreadsheets, organizing with columns and rows in numerous colors all the hundreds of bands and musicians he has collected around the USA. So, before the break, we were just about to launch into the independent music of the Los Angeles area.
All right, yes, let's continue with Los Angeles. I got so many different musicians I want to acknowledge and play and shout out to in Los Angeles. So tonight we're splitting Los Angeles into several pieces, and tonight we're playing the singer-songwriter from Los Angeles piece.
Okay, so on your spreadsheet then, you've got a geographical parameter, and you've got the singer-songwriter parameter within that geographical parameter, and as you mentioned earlier, you also have the weird out crazy music parameter. So you've got all these things very carefully categorized and taxonomized. All these different kinds of music.
That's right, if I say so myself.
Well, okay, so where are we going first in Los Angeles, Kevin Walmot?
All right, let's stop off in Pasadena. There's that famous old surf song about the little old lady from Pasadena, but this is not a little old lady here.
Okay.
This is a guy I've been dying to play for you for months. This is a guy named R.T. Valine. He performs solo as R.T. Valine, and sometimes he has a group of musicians that call themselves R.T. and the 44s. And he plays basically straight up country blues. So this is maybe not what you expect from the glam and the glitter and the lights of Los Angeles, but this coexists in Los Angeles too. I was introduced to RT by a coworker who lived in Pasadena, and at the time RT had a little tiny mini ranch out in the kind of undeveloped area of Pasadena. Since then, he's moved away from Los Angeles. He moved to Oklahoma, where his family has some land, but I'm lumping him in with Los Angeles because that's where I discovered him.
Okay, so RT and the 44s, that's the name of the group?
That's right.
Okay.
And you'll see immediately once you listen to him why I think he's worth listening to and probably destined for some degree of success.
And what's the name of the song we're going to hear?
Okay, song number one. I want to play you two songs. Number one is called Water to Wine, and it's a nice little old kind of a corny love song from his album that's called Ramble On.
Okay. And do you want to segue into the second song right away, or do you want to talk between songs?
No, let me explain the second song after.
Okay. Water to Wine by RT44.
Still need you.
So that was wonderful, and you know, I would call that like Americana or alt country. I would play it with Steve Earle, you know, stuff like that. Really great. That was wonderful.
Yeah, I'm glad you like that. Well, so I was going to point out, you know, you might have noticed that his singing voice sounds an awful lot like Johnny Cash. So he will sometimes sort of bristle at that comparison because, I mean, if you grew up and everybody kept telling you you look exactly like Abraham Lincoln, you'd probably get tired of it. But his singing voice is very similar to Johnny Cash. The music he performs is probably like 96-98% his own compositions. He's a very prolific writer, and his stuff is original. It's not, you know, it's not really inspired by any one particular singer, but he is not above doing a Steve Earle cover or a Johnny Cash cover. He will do cover songs of people that the audience will recognize, and he does them really well, but he's extremely original. I could talk all day about RT. Basically, he builds a lot of his own instruments. So when his band RT and the 44ers perform, his drummer has a drum kit that's made out of gas cans, and he builds banjos and you know, washtub basses, stuff like that.
So he's the Harry Parch of Americana.
You might say that, yeah.
So wow, does he make his own guitar? Is it like a cigar box guitar or something like that? Does he do that kind of thing?
He does make them. Usually he performs with a store-bought guitar or that he's actually gotten from somewhere, but he does make them for people.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. Very interesting.
He specializes also in buying antique old microphones and kind of experimenting with the different qualities of an antique mic versus a modern mic. So sometimes you'll hear these songs that have this old-timey feel to them, and it's because he's using an old-time microphone that has certain, you know, audio differences from modern microphones.
Right. Very interesting. Wow. He sounds like somebody you could spend a couple of days interviewing at least.
I think so. So I wish he would come and visit Santa Fe sometime. I've begged him to do that. I know his music will go over well here, but he never seems to quite pass through here. So I will try and get him into your studio. I will not stop trying.
So RT and the 44s. And so you have another song for us.
That's right. You can look them up on Facebook or Bandcamp whatsoever. You know, basically he's very prolific, and he's pretty much anywhere that you find independent music. So that was a nice, sweet, old-fashioned love song. He's also kind of famous for singing dirty songs, filthy songs, you know, prurient songs. So,
excellent. Okay.
He's toned it down somewhat because he's been releasing a lot of albums lately that are more, you know, family friendly and kind of cutting out the dirty stuff. But he does still have recordings of the dirty stuff if you want to find it. So I want to play you a song that is probably one of the filthiest, most dirty songs you may have ever played on your show, but there are no expletives. There's no actual description. It's completely innuendo.
Oh, okay. Well, this sounds great. Although he would have to be pretty extreme to even come close to some of the stuff I played on my show. So we'll see.
Oh, just wait.
All right.
Let me give you a hint. This song is called Speaking in Tongues.
Speaking in Tongues and RT and the 44s.
That's right. Let her rip. This has the best opening line of any song I've ever heard.
I can't hear you with your thighs around my ears. So just sit back, big mama, finish up them beers. Ain't no need for talking where I'm going to. I'm just a good time man who's here to satisfy you. And I'm speaking in tongues, I'm licking in riddles. Play those lovely lips like a goddamn fiddle. Son, I just sit back and enjoy the ride. Don't even tell me not to bite the sides, 'cause I can't hear them words you're saying. I'm just speaking in tongues. mama put me in my place. Ain't no need for talking, and you won't be denied. So just climb on up, take this mustache ride. I'm speaking in tongues, I'm licking in riddles. Woo. I won't play those lovely lips like a goddamn fiddle. Somehow I just sit back and enjoy the ride. Don't even tell me not to bite the side, 'cause I can't hear damn words you sing. I'm just speaking in tongues. I'm speaking in tongues. I'm licking in riddles. Ooh, I wanna play those lovely lips like a goddamn fiddle. Some night just sit back and enjoy the ride. Don't even tell me not to come inside, 'cause I already did twice. I'm just speaking in tongues.
Well, I've played songs along that theme. You should hear Muff Divin' by the Gizmos. That's
I've heard of that song. I haven't actually listened to it, but I have heard of that.
well, they're another group I played as an independent group way back in the day. So that was great, though. That was hilarious, amusing, and very poetic.
All right, very good. He, like I say, he's a very prolific songwriter. He writes these incredible lyrics. And next interview, I want to play another song for you where he really just uses that lyric writing ability to full effect.
Sounds cool. So that was RT in the 44s. The name of the song was Speaking in Tongues. He is our first Los Angeles artist. So where are we going to go next?
Okay, now we're going to move a little further south to San Diego. When we had our episode about dead bands, the Day of the Dead, I played a song by the Friday Band. And I mentioned that the keyboardist for the Friday Band was a guy named Jeremy, who is also very plugged into the local music scene. He has a home studio, and he will play keyboards for other bands sometimes. And so he knows a lot of the up-and-coming musicians in the San Diego area. So what I'm going to play now is not Jeremy, but somebody that I met through Jeremy, who has recorded at least 2 albums, I think 2 albums, in Jeremy's studio, and Jeremy kind of promotes him a lot. The songwriter... I should back up a little and say that I have so many songs from Los Angeles that I've kind of split them into 3 different categories. So tonight, here's another way we split into categories and discuss definitions. Everybody I'm playing for you tonight is kind of a singer-songwriter. So that has a specific definition that maybe you think of as differently from me, but I'll just start by saying singer-songwriters are people who generally perform alone in some kind of bar, usually with a guitar and no other accompaniment. So that sort of defines the genre, because a singer-songwriter is not going to do a very complicated song with a lot of harmonic parts or something. He's going to be there alone in a bar, and he's trying to be heard over loud conversation. He's also not going to be doing a screamo punk song, because you can't keep that up when you're alone for an hour, that kind of thing. So the singer-songwriters are generally sort of unaccompanied guitar, usually kind of light rock, melodic, and trying to show off their voice. What do you think of as a singer-songwriter?
Okay, well, that definitely qualifies, although almost everybody I'd call a singer-songwriter has, when they've recorded an album, recorded with a full band. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of, at least in the recording side of things, the singer-songwriter definitely works with other musicians and does harmonies and stuff like that. You know, the epitome, the archetypal singer-songwriters are people like David Crosby and Joni Mitchell and James Taylor, and those were the people who originally got called singer-songwriters as a genre.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. Most of the people that I'm playing for you tonight make their recordings with a backup band of some kind. But if you look up this next guy, if you look up RT and he's playing without his band, he's basically playing with one guitar. If you look up this next guy, his name is Andy Mauser, and you go to see one of his gigs, he's going to be playing unaccompanied guitar at a bar somewhere. He doesn't have a band that basically follows him around. So in studio, he had a lot of backup, but his songs are kind of written to be efficient when played solo. He's not going to write a song with a lot of complicated parts, because it just won't come off in a noisy bar.
Well, yeah, I can understand that. And I should mention that I'm talking to Kevin Walmot, and as I said a few minutes ago, not only does Kevin collect recordings of independent music, but he creates spreadsheets organizing the music with colors by genres and geography and other factors. So Kevin, what color do you ascribe to singer-songwriter?
I don't actually have it up in front of me, but I'm pretty sure I labeled all of these guys kind of a blue-green, except for RT. RT is kind of a folk blues, and so they got sort of I should have made them blue. That would make more sense, but I think I put kind of folksy blues into an orange color on my spreadsheet. Everybody else I'm playing is kind of a blue-green because they're basically light rock. It's not so much that they're solo, but they're sort of light rock, college rock, easy listening bar rock.
Cool. All right. Yep. I knew you had at least one of a dozen ways of taxonomizing these. So who's the next person we're going to hear again now?
So here's an artist from San Diego. His name is Andy Mauser. He's put out
Mauser, okay.
Right. He's put out, I believe he's put out 3 albums. 2 of them were recorded with my friend Jeremy, like I mentioned. This song I'm going to play is from his album called Matter. He has a more recent album that's called Red Umbrella. You can look those up. And so I want to play you a song called 21 Tuesdays by Andy Mauser.
Market girl, you've been walking by, caught my eye. So I tripped on my guitar cord, you've been humming tunes. The southern groove, thought I might make a move. You just kept on walking by. Just kept on walking by. I never got your name on that first day. Let alone that first day. Then you turned around, you sat down, sing along to every song that I was singing. From Honeybee and you and me, tequila making everybody crazy. I'll play it again till that bitter end. The market is over and those lights come on. Everybody leaves, and suddenly it's you and me on the corner of this street. Life is but a game of these chances seldom taken by mediocre minds who accept the due time behind invisible bars, scars, stars, beauty queens. They're down in their dream, won't not you? Ooh. So won't not me. So won't not he. Oh, now. I never got your name on that first day. It only took me 21 Tuesdays till you turned around, you sat down, sang along to every song that I was singing. From honeybees and you and me, tequila making everybody crazy. And I'll play it again, the bitter end. The market is over and those lights come on. Everybody leaves, and suddenly it's you and me on the corner of the street. sat down, sing along to every song that I was singing, from honeybees and you and me, tequila making everybody crazy, and I'll play it again, the bitter end. Market is over and those lights come on, but it is, and suddenly it's you and me. Everybody leaves, and suddenly it's you and me on the corner of this street.
Now, that was wonderful, and actually, I would compare his singing style to David Bromberg.
I'm glad you liked it. And that's exactly like you were talking about before we played the song, that he has a whole backup band when he's in the studio recording, and he's got some people with some really subtle harmonies there you probably heard. But then he's usually going to be performing this song solo with a guitar in a noisy bar, and some of the subtleties of the studio recording are lost, some of the backup performances, but it's still a good song.
And it's all the more enhanced by the smell of vomit that you get in a small club. So there you go.
Andy tends to play at wine bars more. It's the punk guys that have the vomit-inducing bathrooms.
Okay. All right. Okay, I'll allow him that then.
All right, I'll go off on a little tangent just for the amusement of your listeners, I hope. But since we're talking about Andy Mauser, I'll start mentioning, you were talking about my fandom and my classification of the music. So I've followed a lot of bands around. I've been a fan of a lot of bands. And usually being a music fan is a labor of love. It's not actually really reported or written down in stone or anything. You're just there. You're paying a cover charge to see the show, and the band appreciates you. But every once in a while, you do get some a little bone tossed your way by the band. And Andy Mauser is one of the few people who have actually done that. Out of hundreds of bands that I've followed, Andy actually explicitly credited me in the liner notes of that album Matter just for being a fan.
Oh, how cool is that?
That's always cool when that happens.
Yeah. Well, it only happened to me once. The Bizarros thanked me on their album because
oh, that's nice.
Yeah, Robert Christogal read my playlists and he checked out the Bizarros and gave them a good write-up. So there you go.
So there's something like 110 bands on that music graph that we keep talking about. So as long as we're talking about Andy thanking me, I want to mention at least a couple others who have. So I met Andy through Jeremy from the Friday Band. And the Friday Band had a liner notes in one of their albums that had a whole bunch of pictures. Sometimes people do a montage of pictures inside the liner notes. And I was in a couple of those pictures standing next to the band in the liner notes. And another band that thanked me is a band I'm dying to play for you, but they have to wait until we get to the weird and avant-garde music from Los Angeles, so that's another episode. But there's a band that I've been dying to play for you called the Manx, M-A-N-X, who plays really weird, bizarre punk. And they have thanked me a couple times in their liner notes. And finally, there's another band called Stroke 9, which is out of San Francisco in Northern California. And they had some national play. They were kind of popular in the southeast part of the country for some reason, even though they originated in San Francisco. And they had a really subtle shout out to me at one point in their liner notes. This is a whole different tangent. Occasionally when I'm really good friends with a band and I've been seeing them for a long time, but they're still just starting out and not famous and on a shoestring budget, what I will do sometimes, and I'm sorry to disappoint other bands, that I've done this to realize that I've done this to more than one band, but sometimes I make my own t-shirt of the band and then I just show up to a gig wearing a t-shirt of them that they didn't create.
Oh, cool. Well, that is extreme fandom, if you ask me.
It's usually a big surprise. It's always pretty funny. Oh, yeah, some guy was selling them over there, and there's nobody over there. So at one point, that band that I just mentioned from San Francisco, Stroke 9, they had a picture of the band inside one of their liner notes, and the guitarist was wearing my shirt that I had designed for them. So that was a subtle shout out to me.
Very cool. So, Kevin, it looks like we've gone through about half the songs you want to play in this episode, and as I mentioned at the beginning of this show, you will be back in 1 week to continue this fascinating presentation of the independent music of Los Angeles.
Well, I'm glad you like it, and I certainly got more for you next week. I'm talking not only about Los Angeles, but the greater Southern California area, which includes San Diego and Santa Barbara, so my friends who are listening to this, yes, I will get to you as soon as possible.
All right, so we're talking about the Los Angeles megalopolis then.
Yes, Mega City 2. In Judge Dredd comics, I think they call it that or something like that.
Okay, we'll be back. We'll be back to cruise the streets of the Los Angeles megalopolis. And so, Kevin, once again, thank you so much for all your incredible work and your detailed and meticulous descriptions and spreadsheets and analysis of this music. We're all enlightened as a consequence thereof. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I believe I said this before, but I really appreciate you giving a highlight to all these artists who are struggling to come up with income during this time of coronavirus. Virtually all of them are doing some kind of Facebook or YouTube live concert, and they all have tip jars. So please look them up.
That's right. You can look on the Oil of Dog playlist and check out all these musicians and find out when they're going to be doing some kind of podcast or broadcast so that you can buy their merch or send a donation their way.
All right. Thanks again.
Thank you. I'm Gary Storm with Kevin Walmot, and I'll be back.
Oil of Dog.
Oil of Dog with Gary Storm returns in a moment.